Only was a special event. But we can't go on. Okay. They're all the way through like a year with weddings. You know, I understand.
And I bought the Troy is the first hardcover for $75 and paperback for $20. So I bought it because I can read it. And I said, will she sign it over the first edition? She said, no. She'll sign whatever, even if you sign it. Anyway,
Oh, they don't see that. Hang on.
I guess Janis is about an hour or so. Because it was on the same units for the library. She's got a little razor side to her.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So
We've been to all the movies.
she's sweet. Yeah, well, when this you have them
Well, you know, it's not there, but it's not there.
give and take of everything.
Every once in a while, I go rock into the water and look for ripples come out. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like your shirt. Do you play? Do you play? Yeah. Yuki? Huh? You play ukulele?
Yeah, I build them too.
You do? Yeah. Cool. I diddle. I play. So I was like,
Sorry, my friend. Selling my business.
John said he'd come and help if you wanted. Good afternoon. I'm Jenny Upshaw, and I'm president of the Friends of the Island Library. And it's a pleasure and an honor to welcome guests at the Waterline Ballroom here in Cobb's Corner, and the guests in the Walker Swift Room at the Island Library. Hi there. And we welcome you to our fourth lecture of this travel series for 2019. I want to give a heartfelt thanks to everyone who's been involved with this event today, the Waterline, for this venue so we could accommodate more patrons, and to the Islander for providing an after party. Many thanks of appreciation to both of you for helping host this lecture. Every single one of the friends of the board, on the board of directors, have a name tag on like this, and they have helped in some way to help provide or plan or execute this lecture, especially the lecture and travel series chairman, Julie Perry. She orchestrated this, and of course, she drafted her husband, John. And we have his AV excellence, My husband is over at the library doing AV. Ed. And one other board member, Melissa Williams. We are grateful for all your technical knowledge and setting this up for broadcast. Without all of our efforts, this day would not have happened. So now, before we get started with today's program, I would like to share a few things with you about the Holmes Beach Library. We're a full-service library with many opportunities. We have books and tapes and computers, activities, and much more. Did you know that you can check out a fishing pole? No. You can check out baking dishes. You can check out a telescope. That's the checkout of things. And we have a fabulous staff at the Island Library, as do all the libraries. And we'd like you to come into the library and take a look. If you're not a member of the library,
I'm a member.
I hope you consider joining. There's a form for joining, and it can be as little as $10 or on up, depending on the membership that you choose. But an individual membership is just $10. For your membership, you can enjoy a semi-annual newsletter and have an early entry to our book sale, which will be coming up soon, the weekend of February 15th and 16th. It is going to be held at Roser Church in the city of Anna Maria. If you are a member of the Friends, you will be invited to the pre-sale event. If you don't buy your membership today, there will be memberships available at the bookstore. And how do you think we spend those membership dollars? Well, things like this, the lecture and travel series. We do children's programs. We provide extra special things in the summer for children and teens. And sometimes we do other programs in the library, perhaps furniture, just things that the county, it's not in the county's budget. And we just try to fulfill whatever the needs are of our patrons. So visit the library. It's kept up with the modern world and could be a tremendous source for information to spark your interests and all the fun activities for every age. Now, right now, I have a very important instruction, so please follow. We ask that you turn off and put away your phone. Please. No pictures, no videotaping. If you would like a picture.
Afterwards is fine.
Yes, afterwards is fine. So once Janis finishes her lecture, you could have a picture with her. You can take pictures then, after the lecture. She will be available.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So now to our main event, I would like to introduce one of the most talented singer and songwriters of our era, Janis Ian. Janis has been the first in many categories. Just to name a few, at 15 years old, she was nominated for her first Grammy and debut album. In 1975, she won her first Grammy for the song At 17. And Janis was the first musical guest for Saturday Night Live when George Carlin was the first host. When you read her autobiography, you'll recognize she corroborates with many awesome singers and songwriters of the past 50 years. Her autobiography received 4 stars from Kirkus and was on Oprah's and Publishers' weekly pick. Her children's book, The Tiny Mouse, has also won not only literary and musical awards, but also the hearts of children and adults. She also has 32 gold and platinum records, and this is a testament to her achievements.
Still can't afford to buy a house here.
Those items will be on sale here after the lecture and at the library. We welcome you to come and see Janis and buy anything that is available for sale. So now let me tell you how this came about. About a year in advance, we start looking for speakers for the next lecture and travel series. We take suggestions from Friends members and friends of the board of directors, and we research them, and then we agonized over who we would be able to get that would really satisfy the visitors and our residents. It's sort of like making a cake. To get the right mix of ingredients, quality speakers with a range of topics that would be appealing and interesting to our residents, snowbirds, and visitors, the final cake has to be tasty, sparkling with new speakers that engage, intrigue, and expand our knowledge so that our patrons' palates are satisfied. So this year, we put all the suggestions in the mixing bowl, and guess what? Janis Ian's name was discussed. I thought, we don't have a snowball's chance in Florida, this climate, but what hurt would it do? Let's, go ahead and try. I contacted her to ask if she would speak at the little library on Anna Maria Island. Lo and behold, she accepted. I knew her songs and that she was a famous singer-songwriter, but I did not know that she has a soft spot in her heart for libraries. I realized this after I met her. I read her autobiography, and I hope you can get one today because it's phenomenal. I read it the very next week after I met her, that libraries were sometimes her refuge and maybe safe place. So they're on sale today, and you can get one. I also learned that Janis gives lectures similar to this one and does some awesome altruistic work through the Pearl Foundation. And you'll hear more about that later. And then she still picks up the guitar and shares her talents. I was in education for many years, and I didn't know very many middle or high school students who harnessed their talents like Janis did to write dubious integrity into a song with meaning for peers that would live on for generations. That is phenomenal. On behalf of the Friends of the Island Library, we're so appreciative and truly excited to have Janis Ian as our speaker today. Let's welcome her.
Thank you. I'm hoping that we have neither a wardrobe malfunction nor a sound malfunction. As you can see, this is considerably bigger than what normally happens at the library. And I also want to thank the hotel and the local press for all of their support, which has just made this possible, and our esteemed crew, without whom we would have no sound and no lights and no me. And the reason that we ask you to turn off your phones and not take pictures is in part because this is being streamed live. So we're going to run into copyright problems if you're taking a lot of photos, and we're also going to have a lot of people angry with me. I'll talk more about it later, but after this is over, I will be over there with the redhead, where we have more stuff about me than you could imagine existing. And I'm more than happy to take selfies with people and lean over at the table and grin and do whatever. I no longer sign body parts. It's that unfortunate incident in Australia, and now no more. Libraries have indeed been my refuge and my hope, because when I was young in New Jersey, I grew up not wealthy, not even middle class. My father was a farmer when I was growing up. My mother was a waitress. They slowly clawed their way up, as second generation and first generation Americans often do. My father went to school on the GI Bill after serving in the military. And my mother worked for people at Rutgers University, and my father eventually became a teacher, and my mother became a fundraiser for colleges. But that wasn't until I was in my teens. So the whole time that I was growing up, the idea of owning a hardback book was inconceivable. That was something that you got for a birthday. And I still have the first hardback book I ever bought, which was a copy of a Madeline L'Engle book, A Wrinkle in Time. Decades and decades later, I got to meet Madeline and spend time with her, and that book is still one of the greatest things I own. Libraries, for me, were the place where I could be told that there were other people in the world like me. That when there was no one around who understood, in some book, somewhere, some author understood. And that someday, if I was lucky, I would grow up and I would be able to find people who understood those feelings that I had that just ran over me so strongly that I couldn't hold them in, and I had to learn guitar and I had to learn to write songs because there was nowhere else for that to go. I had a wonderful librarian from the time I was in 5th grade who I corresponded with till the day she died, and she would go to the adult stacks and she would check out books for me on the sly. And she changed my life. She introduced me to Langle and Edward Eager and Charles Dickens and all of these people that my parents knew about but never had really time to show me. So I don't remember ever being asked by a library to do something, and if it was at all physically feasible, saying anything other than yes. Libraries, to me, often stood between my life and chaos, and have on more than one occasion given me refuge. So when I was asked by Ginny, who very bravely sent me an email, it was a no-brainer. I was going to be here on vacation, and I immediately said yes. And from there, we went to, okay, how do we do this? And I said, it's going to be pretty easy. I'll be talking about me, which is, like most artists, my favorite subject. In my little world, more me is always a good thing. I did want to tell you that everything that we're selling, and we have 5 items, everything we're selling, the proceeds are being split between the Pearl Foundation, which more later, and the library itself. There are no deductions. We are picking up, my wife and I, the cost of the merchandise and any sales tax. So 100% of whatever you spend today, or drop in those little tip jars with a little slit in the top, 100% of that will be split between both entities, the Pearl Foundation and the library. So this is a free event. If you got spare change in your pocket, just chuck it in the jar. So I got asked to write my autobiography the first time when I was 15. And as much as I think of myself, even I was aware that that was a little too early. But around 2001, 2000, it came up again because suddenly lesbians became hot. In fact, I was told by someone from William Morris Agency when I turned him down that lesbians wouldn't be hot forever. My only thought for that was, thank God. But a couple of years later, I started thinking about it, and I thought, you know what? My friends began dying. I'm sure some of you who are of a certain age know that feeling. And I grew up with a lot of people who turned out to become very legendary, people like Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, who at the time were just my buds that I hung out with in the evening in the village or in the studios and played around and tried instruments out. I thought, I've lived through Vietnam and all the protests. I've lived through gay liberation and women's liberation and the civil rights movement. My family were followed by the FBI most of my childhood because my mother worked with the Civil Rights Congress. And they would go out picketing and marching. And you could always tell the FBI agents because it would be August in New Jersey and they'd be wearing black suits and ties. But I thought, if I could make this less about me and more about the times, it might be pretty cool. So I went to my wife, Pat, and I said, Pat, I've decided to write my autobiography. And she said, that's great. Who's it going to be about? And I said, well, it will be about me and my fabulous life. And Pat kind of looked at me and she said, I hate to break this to you, but your life is not that interesting. I was crushed, as you may imagine. I had always thought my life was much more interesting than anyone else's. But Pat explained to me that people normally have other things on their minds, like whether they can pay their rent. I don't understand that to this day, but okay. So I thought, well, this is a little embarrassing. I'm writing my autobiography. I have a book deal. And I really can't think of much interesting about my life. So I went back to Pat, who is an attorney, who went back to school in her 40s. And I said, okay, I'm not that interesting, what do I do? And she looked at me like I was stupid, and she said, lie. So I know you and I'll agree. This world needs us a lot more me. Well, I have found a remedy. I'm gonna write my autobiography. I've led a fascinating life. I've had a husband and a wife. But you will truly be amazed at just how humble I have stayed. Enough about me, let's talk about you. What do you think of me? You must feel such gratitude that you will get to read my autobiography. My life didn't have a very big plot. I guess I'll have to lie a lot. It should be easy to make things up. There's no one left to call my bluff. A lot of my old friends have passed on. The rest did drugs and their memory's gone. So I'll write my own history in my autobiography. I'll say I slept with a Kennedy and I slept with Forrest Gump. No matter what they offered me, I would not sleep with. You know, sometimes you just can't come up with a rhyme. Maybe they'll film it for TV. I wonder who they'll cast as me. It should be somebody I look like. Glenn Close would be alright. It's gonna be hard to deal with fame once the whole world knows my name. But I'll stay humble and grateful too. All the little people like you. 8,000 pages more of me and all I've seen and done. That will be my legacy, and it's just volume 1 of my autobiography. I can see people I know from vacationing here and hanging around who are used to seeing me in torn off t-shirts and board shorts going, "She cleaned up." So I say in concert that, well, I wrote my first song when I was 12 and I got published at 13 and made a record at 14, had a hit at 15, and I was a has-been at 16. And there's a lot of truth to that. I work in a business that has become an industry, and it's a rough place. It's a lot easier when the mafia ran it. I'm not joking. At least then you knew exactly where you stood. You didn't get paid, but you got a car. Nowadays, you're lucky if you get gas. I wrote this song when I was 14. I was living in East Orange, New Jersey, which was an all-black neighborhood. I was one of 3 white girls in my school. It was the height of the civil rights movement. And I got very lucky with the producer, Shadow Morton, and various people at record company that finally signed it after it had been turned down by 22 companies. I got really lucky and it came out and it was a hit record. And it ignited a firestorm. And I did what you do when you're 15, 16 years old and you're living in the middle of a maelstrom. I ignored it. But a radio station in Atlanta was burned to the ground for playing it. And I hear stories even now of kids who were locked in the basement or had my records broken over their heads because their parents didn't want to hear it. I was oblivious, or I tried to be, until one day I found myself at a sold-out show in Southern California. And I walked on stage and I was doing my little show and I got to this song. I started singing and all was well. And then I noticed some people over on my far left, and I heard a commotion, but of course, being me and a performer, I figured they were talking about how fabulous I was, so I just kind of smiled at them to thank them and went on with my song. But the noise continued, and after a while, it got so loud that I moved back from the microphone to try and hear what they were saying. And as I was moved back, a figure detached itself from the crowd, and he stood up, and he cupped his arms around his mouth, and he yelled at the top of his lungs, "Hey, nigger lover, go home!" I'd never even heard that word said out loud, and I didn't know what to do. But I thought, well, I'm a performer. I'm supposed to keep performing, so I kept singing. And as I kept singing, the people around him started chanting. Until I realized that these 20-odd people had bought tickets so that they could boo me off the stage. And it became a battle. Nigger lover, nigger lover. Nigger lover, nigger lover. Until I finally started to cry, and I was not going to let them see me cry. So I made my way off stage as quietly and with as much dignity as I could find, and then I ran to the ladies' room, and that's where the promoter found me laying over the sink, crying my eyes out. Well, he'd been counting money. He hadn't been anywhere in the room. So he said, "What are you doing off stage? Show's not over." I said, "They were calling me names." And he said, "You don't leave the stage when somebody calls you a name." And I said, "Well, they were calling me nigger lover." And he said, "Well, you got to go back out there." I said, "I can't go back out there." These were the height of the civil rights era. These were Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. People were being killed. I was not about to go back on that stage. And we argued for a while. And he said the one thing that could have forced me back. He said, "I cannot believe the girl who wrote that song is a coward." Now, I'm Jewish, and I was raised on stories of the Maccabees. And I was taught that you're supposed to be a hero. Doesn't matter what your life is, you're still supposed to be a hero. And I knew that if I didn't go back out there, I couldn't face my family again. So I went out, and I picked up the guitar, and of course they kept yelling. And I started singing, and the most astonishing thing happened. I watched as all the little volunteer ushers came down that aisle, and they shone their flashlights in these folks' faces, and suddenly they weren't quite so loud. And then the people in the audience behind them pulled them back into their seats by the shoulders. And then the theater manager came and threw them out. And it taught me a great lesson, and I'll be forever grateful for it. It taught me the power of a song. That you can have something 3 minutes long, and that one 3-minute song can make people so afraid of change that they will try to disrupt a 15-year-old on stage by screaming obscenities. It was an amazing lesson, and again, I'm forever grateful to it. You come to my door, baby. Your face is clean and shining black as night. My mama went to answer, you know that you looked so fine. Now I could understand the tears and the shame. She called you boy instead of your name. When she wouldn't let you inside. When she turned and said, "But honey, he's not our kind." She said, "I can't see you anymore, baby. I can't see you anymore. You walk me down to school, baby. Everybody's acting deaf and blind until they turn and say, why don't you just stick to your own kind? My teachers all laugh, their smirking stares are cutting deep down in our affairs. Preachers of equality think they believe it, then why won't they just let us be? They say I can't see you anymore, baby. I can't see you anymore. One of these days I'm gonna stop my listening, gonna raise my head up high. One of these days I'm gonna raise up my glistening wings and fly. But that day will have to wait for a while. Baby, I'm only society's child. When we're older, things may change, but for now, this is the way they must remain. I say I can't see you anymore, baby. I can't see you anymore. No, I don't want to see you anymore, baby. Well, let me tell you about this foundation. There are a lot of people who have foundations. Sometimes they have foundations for good reasons and sometimes not. We were sitting with a business manager one day talking, and he said, why do you have a foundation? And I said what I thought was perfectly logical, which was to give money away. And he looked at me and he said, no, really, why do you have a foundation? And I said, to give money away. And so it was, I found that certain people don't have foundations to give money away, they have foundations to make money. Which never occurred to me, quite honestly, because I think the karma of that would be pretty awful. We run a pretty legitimate foundation, the Pearl Foundation. We are a public 501c3, just like the library, Friends of the Library is. And we post our tax returns on the pearlfoundation.org site. And our expenses have never exceeded $2,500 for tax preparation. So pretty much everything gets given away. Our scholarships are geared toward what is now politely called returning students, but back in the day just meant old people who want to go back to school. My mom, who was about the most energetic person I have ever known, took a big fall when I was around 10 years old, and she started getting numbness and tingling in her hands and feet. And everybody put it down to the fall. Busted this, busted that, no MRIs, no CAT scans. Took until my mid-20s for the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis to be made. And I watched my mother, who had always been first in everything, slowly become last. The way I put it, it seemed like my mother had been dying by inches for so long that her life was measured on a yardstick. And I could measure the inch where she first felt that tingling and numbness. And I could measure the spot where she first descended into a wheelchair and took her last steps. And I could measure the day that I finally stopped insisting she be who she'd been and began to accept what she'd become. My mother marched in the streets with Gloria Steinem and Bella Abzug. My mother taught me that men should do dishes and women should carry whatever. That both were capable, although sometimes it was good to have one or the other just because of the physiological differences. My dad always did the dishes because he liked doing dishes. And my mom cooked because my dad was a terrible cook. She taught me about things like Hiroshima, and that on the 4th of July I should also remember that a lot of people had died so that I could have the 4th of July. She taught me that it was good and noble to be an artist, something that many people in my family didn't understand. And yet she reached a point in her life, this incredibly articulate, well-read woman, where all questions had to be answered with yes or no because maybe was 2 syllables too long. And she couldn't talk anymore. And I would ask myself, are we doing the right thing helping her prolong her life? And I would stand there with my brother and say, what would she have wanted until she told us? And as she lay dying, and I was there as her medical executor, I remember saying to my brother, should I rush her to the hospital? Should I see what they can do for her? Is this really the right thing to do, to let her go like this? My mother was dying for so long that it was easy to forget the man from the government who came around once a year to make sure that she still had multiple sclerosis and hadn't been miraculously cured while nobody was watching. She'd been dying so long that I started to forget what she sounded like and what she looked like when she was well. She died a good death, and it taught me that I wanted to die at home, surrounded by people who loved me. And that when it's your time, it's your time. She died knowing that her children adored her. And that she had left behind a legacy, because to the day that she died, there were 2 things always in front of the wheelchair. There was her graduation degree from Goddard College, where we had sent her. And there was a picture of my brother and myself because those were her defining moments. She went back to school in her 40s. And I'm convinced that going back to school, even though it took her 14 years, kept her alive. So when she died, Pat said, you should do something to honor your mother. You should found a scholarship. And I said, that's a great idea. Who will pay for it? This was 1998. Pat said, you know that internet thing you always talk about? That you keep telling me is the wave of the future? Why don't you hold an auction? So we held, my friend Michael and I, what is statistically now the first internet international auction. On a wings and a prayer, pre-eBay, we took cash and checks. And we put together 300 odd items. We had everything from my baby shoes to a guitar and a piano. And we sold things for whatever the market would bear through my little website, janisian.com, named after me, of course. And we hoped that we would raise $15,000, and at the end of the day, we had netted $63,000, which all went to Goddard College for another fine hobby. People kept giving me money for the foundation that didn't exist. So finally I traded off a living room concert, which I show up in your living room for you and 44 of your closest friends, and I do a concert. And I traded one of those off with a bunch of attorneys, and we formed the Pearl Foundation, a 501c3 IRS-approved tax-deductible charitable public organization. We raise money from the sale of merchandise, from living room concerts, from anything you can think of. You can make Pearl an offer and through the Pearl Foundation or my website, and I've done everything from send somebody a personal photograph with a mustache drawn on my face, to pictures of my dog, to inviting them to come and be a roadie for the day and do nothing more than schlep equipment, which I don't understand why you'd pay for that, but people do. We give away everything at the end of each year. We endow scholarships at 4 different schools. We've put more than 60 people through college now. And as of December of last year, we had given away in endowments $1,116,000. It's a pretty cool thing to be a part of. And we treasure it. Although sometimes I do say to Pat, we could have gone to Argentina with this money, you know. So Nora Guthrie, who is Woody Guthrie's daughter, called me one day and said, Woody left an unfinished song. Nora knew my mom. And she said, I think that you ought to finish this. And I said, there's no way. I'm not going to ruin an unfinished Woody Guthrie song. Go down in history as that songwriter. And she said, let me send you the lyric, see what you think. Now, for those of you who are not songwriters, which I assume is most of you, songwriting is a lot harder than it looks. Usually, to write a decent song takes me about 3 months, and the last one I wrote took a year. Partly because I've gotten lazier as I get older, partly because sometimes it's really just hard to say exactly the right thing in exactly the right way. But once in a great while, a miracle occurs. I opened the envelope, I looked at the lyric. It was just scraps. Melody popped into my head. By the time I got home, I had a chorus. Sat down with a guitar, wrote a second verse. By the next morning, the song was done. I was astonished. What was even cooler was that Nora loved it and Arlo loved it. Arlo sings it in his shows, which is one of the more impressive credits in my life. I love singing this song because it reminds me that at 67, I've been very fortunate in my family. Because Woody's mom and my mom had a lot in common. They were both ill for much of their children's lives. They were both the ones to get their children instruments. My mother borrowed and begged and got my grandparents to loan so that I could have my first guitar. They were the ones that never made fun of our dreams, you know? So. If I could only hear my mother sing again, if I could close my eyes and hear your voice as then, all the friends and family would sing along with me, and they would set your spirit free. In my heart I hear your voice again, and every note's as natural as then. When I sing those songs for family and friends, in my heart I hear your voice again. I know the troubled times that turned your heart to gray, and all the tears and sorrows followed in their day. But deep within the heart of hunger, there were always melodies, and they passed from you to me. In my heart I hear your voice again, and every note's as natural as then. When I sing those songs with family and friends, in my heart I hear your voice again. In my heart I hear you sing again. time I got to sing that song live, it was at a Woody Guthrie Memorial Concert at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, where I live. And Woody's whole family was there, all the aunts and uncles that survived, Arlo and Nora. It was quite an honor. How am I doing on time? No, thank you. That was very helpful. Does anyone, can somebody, it's 2:40. Wow. So the way that we thought we'd work this, because it's a long time to sit for me as well, is that I would talk and sing for about an hour, and then we'd open up the floor to questions in about, I guess, 20 minutes. And if there were no questions, then I would keep singing and talking until I ran out of things to say. Let me make sure that I have my notes here. Oh, my mouse. So if you go back there, you'll see that there's a book back there called The Tiny Mouse. So one of the things I've learned as I got older was that songs have a way of finding their own level. As they say, water seeks its level. I got a call one day from a very small venue in England. And they said, hey, we're hosting the Olympics in England, and we've got a little boat that's going to go down the Thames as part of it. Would you write a song they could sing? I said, about what? And they said, well, we don't know really. We haven't thought very far. But we have some people who've agreed to build the boat. And I said, well, who? And they said, well, artists from all over the world are getting pieces of wood that mean something to them and building a boat. I thought, well, that sounds pretty cool. What's left? And they said, well, the music was kind of an afterthought. So there's a mouse left. And I said, let me get this straight. You want me to write a song about a mouse that goes down the Thames in a boat for the Olympics that is singable? And they said, yeah. And I said, could I get some pictures of the mouse? So I sat there and I thought, well, okay, you've gotten yourself into it this time. And I kept looking at this mouse and I thought, what would it be like to be a tiny mouse that stows away at sea and winds up on a boat and then discovers that perhaps the captain is not as friendly as he had hoped. So I wrote the song and I sent it off to them and they said, oh, this is great, a tiny mouse, wonderful. Can you make a record of it? So I called my friend Randy Lego and I said, could you make a record of this with me, please, for nothing? And he did, just like Trevor Bystrom has done things here with me for nothing. And we sent it to them and it went down the Thames for the Olympics. And then I got a call saying, we'd like to turn this into a book. And I said, great. And the Dutch publisher said, yes, and we'll publish it in English too. And I said, okay. And they said, will you make a website? I said, okay. So the book came out to 4-star reviews everywhere, and the Dutch couple, Dietrich and Ingrid Schubert, who illustrated it, had never done anything by another artist before, so that was huge. And it became this Kirkus and Publishers Weekly pick. For those of you who are in the library, that's a big deal. But more than that, it became Tom Paxton's favorite song. So he would always stand there on stage and try to sing along with it, but he would always forget the words. Tommy, if you're watching, I'm sorry. There was a tiny mouse who lived in a tiny house, full of drafts and doubts and incredible things, like a jack-in-the-box who popped every Sunday at 5 o'clock, and a clown who wore a frown that was threatening. He ate off a silver spoon in a golden room, but platinum plates and diamond goblets weren't enough. I am bored, said he. I think I will go to sea, where I'll be drinking grog and sniffing occasional snuff. So he stowed away that very day, but the motion of the ocean made him sick. Well, he went looking for a loo, but the best that he could do was the bathroom of the captain of the ship. Whoa, the bathroom of the captain of the ship. That was your line. There was a small still life of the captain's wife, and what he saw there nearly brought the mouse to tears. A calico coat and head, and the inscription said, "To the captain of my heart from Kitty dear." The mouse began to cry, "Oh, what a fool am I, to come so far and then be turned out on a plate. Oh, what an awful meal I'll be, most of all to me. So it's overboard I'll go and make my escape." He caught a flounder for a sail, made a rudder of his tail, and swam as fast as he could swim for land, where he dried his whiskers off, and he coughed and coughed and coughed, and spat up 20 oysters and a clam. Oh, he spat up 20 oysters and a clam. Very well done. The moral of the tale is think before you sail, and always keep your paws and whiskers neat. If you're dining on a ship, well, just be sure the room's well lit. Always know what's in the bowl before you eat. Always know what's in the bowl before you eat. It is cute, I know. It's a very adorable book, too. What am I supposed to tell you? I keep forgetting. See, I decided at some point about 5 years ago I was up to 250 dates a year. That's a lot of dates and a lot of travel. That year with 250 dates, I played in 9 countries. And I was on the road for almost 320 days. And I decided that I was now in my 60s. And maybe I didn't have to do that. Maybe I could have a smaller career and a bigger life. And so I started ramping down. And it was really hard because that's what I've done since I was 15. And when you suddenly stop doing what you've done since you were 15, it leaves you feeling very unmoored. And then you get used to people saying, "Are you still alive?" I mean, how do you answer that? Really? "No, I'm dead. You're just talking to my holograph." Or people saying, "Do you still do music?" Which, well, yes, of course. I live and breathe music and words. That's what I'll always do. But people think that if you're not making records, is this the right tuning? I can't remember. People think if you're not making records and you're not out there performing, that you have no life anymore. I'm in the fortunate position. Sorry, I'm trying to tune here and talk at the same time, and like most artists, I can't do more than one thing at once. People think that if you're not out there on the road all the time and you're not making records and you're not on television all the time, that you have stopped, when in fact I'm in the enviable position where I get to choose where I tour when I tour. So 2 or 3 years ago I got to do Lincoln Center, and then I got to play for 15,000 people in San Diego, and last year I got to go to Cambridge and play for another 15, and then go to Holland and do a sold-out show, and build in time to have a life and see places, because when I was touring a lot, I never got to see anything but the inside of cars and venues. And the problem with that is that it doesn't leave you much to write about. You end up writing about wastebaskets or peeling paint. That's pretty boring. So, I am alive. And I am writing, and I do have a good time. But one of the things that really has struck me these last 10 years as I began the ramping down process, and people started asking me how I wanted to be remembered, which I'm never quite sure what to say, because really I'll be dead, so what will I care? Is that if you're really, really lucky as an artist, then once in your life, you might get to write something that touches people in such a big way that it makes them feel like heroes. And I cannot stress enough that I believe in art. I truly believe that art saves lives, that art saves souls. And it doesn't matter to me if you're an artist who makes their living doing it, or if you never make a dime. It doesn't matter to me if you're a potter or a cook or raising children, which is certainly an art in and of itself. Raising them so that they actually live past adolescence. I really believe that art saves, and that it's one of the most noble things you can do. And that people who listen to artists or read artists and support us understand that there's a reason we trust artists when we have lost all faith in the system. We trust artists because whether we agree with their politics, whether we agree with them or not, we know that artists speak from their truth. And I've never met an artist yet who doesn't. No matter what kind of art it is, we speak from the truth as we see it. I said once at the Grammys, we tend to forget that we don't sell records, we sell dreams. And that we're the ones who are there when all hope is gone. It's the artists who hold on to people's dreams and keep them safe. So that when you forget that you ever had a dream, when times are horrible, in the middle of the concentration camps, in the middle of whatever horrible things are happening, you can cling to art and know that somewhere out there someone understands. That's what art has given me, that's what libraries gave me, that's what books still give me. That's what was my goal when I started to do music. I said, I don't want to be a poet, I want to change your life. That's a quote from another poet called Rilke. And when I read that at 16, I understood that that's what I wanted. My goal from then on was to write a song that was so universal, so huge that it would cross gender and age and color and nationality and all of the things that we use to keep ourselves apart from one another. And it would cut straight to the heart. I would never have dreamed when I wrote this song, honestly believing that I was the only person on earth who had ever felt this way. I would never have dreamed that now, 45, 50 years later, it's reaching its 5th and 4th generation, and it's been in films all over the place, and people in Japan sing it back to me in English. I would never have dreamed that I would get lucky enough to write this song, but I am forever grateful to it. I learned the truth at 17, that love was meant for beauty queens and high school girls with clear-skinned smiles who married young and then retired. The Valentines I never knew, the Friday night charades of youth were spent on one more beautiful. At 17 I learned the truth. And those of us with ravaged faces, lacking in the social graces, desperately remained at home, inventing lovers on the phone who called to say, come dance with me, and murmured vague obscenities. It isn't all it seems at 17. A brown-eyed girl in hand-me-downs, whose name I never could pronounce, said, pity please the ones who serve, 'cause they only get what they deserve. And the rich relation hometown queen marries into what she needs, with a guarantee of company and haven for the elderly. Remember those who win the game, lose the love they sought to gain in dead adventures of quality and dubious integrity. Their small town eyes will gape at you in dull surprise when payment due exceeds accounts received at 17. To those of us who knew the pain of Valentines that never came, and those whose names were never called when choosing sides for basketball. It was long ago and far away. The world was younger than today, when dreams were all they gave for free to ugly duckling girls like me. We all play the game, and when we dare, we cheat ourselves at solitaire, inventing lovers on the phone, repenting other lies unknown. They call and say, come on, dance with me, and murmur vague obscenities at ugly girls like me at 17. I need to check, make sure I haven't left anything out. When we're all done, what we're going to ask people to do, I'll be here until anybody who wants to has something signed. You don't have to buy something to get something signed. You can grab a scrap of paper, whatever, it's not baseball. We're going to ask you to line up along this wall, just so that people can get out of the exit doors and observe the fire marshal's rules. So please help us with that. Again, I'm not going anywhere. If you want to go to the bar or stand outside and freeze, you can have those options as well.
And people at other venues.
And there are people also outside. There are people at the library. Please feel free to come here. Just again, please do not crowd. I'm very short, and the air gets very thin where I am, so please don't crowd. I will ask you, my insurance company are insistent that people not step behind the table. So please, if you want a selfie, I'll lean over, that's great. If you want to take a picture with my full body and my gorgeous 67-year-old self, I'm happy to do it after everybody else is done. If you don't mind, just please observe that. Thank you to the Chicken Association of America. It's not the right gig. We are going to open it up now to questions, and we do have a microphone because this is being streamed live. So there's a wireless microphone that somebody has, Ginny has. Let me just mention the library again. I belong at last count to 9 libraries around the country. I am never anywhere more than 2 or 3 weeks where I don't join the local library because I need books. Nowadays it's a little easier because you can check them out for your Kindle or your iPad, but still, if you go to the library and take out books, those books get kept. So it's an important thing to support your local library YouTubers, and it's a cool thing to do. I'll answer questions, nothing is off the table. Ask whatever you like, just raise your hand and talk into the microphone.
I'm in love with your shoes.
Oh, my shoes. Can we
And your music, in good work. I'm just wondering if you'll share a story.
So I got, about 20 years ago, I was looking for comfortable shoes that would look cool because normally on stage I'm mostly in black. And I literally went to Zappos.com and searched under weird shoes, square toes. And these came up and I immediately bought them and then have spent the last 20 years looking for another pair in my size. I did find them in a size 5, which we're going to be auctioning off at some point, but which I am not. And finally, last year I found another pair, but in the meanwhile, these have been repainted by various other artists like Natalia Zuckerman. The best thing I can say about them is on stage I'm standing for 2 hours usually, and I'm comfortable in them. So that's the story of the shoes. Yes. Hang on till the mic reaches you because
Okay,
we're taking
I'm
names.
just curious about your education. Did you go to college for music or writing or?
I'm laughing because I walked out of school the day I turned 16 and never looked back. I have put my brother, my mother, and my wife through college. And I have a GED that I got because it made my mother happy. It cost me $7.50. But let me hasten to say to anybody thinking of quitting school, I was already earning a living. And that's the big deal. Schools in general are not meant for people like me. That's why you see so many particularly jazz musicians on the road at 15 and 16, because that's our school. The time that I came up, people like Ella Fitzgerald or Odetta would teach me things like how to put on makeup, how to behave with the press, how to... Nanette Fabre taught me how to sit down and get up on television without looking foolish. It's a different kind of education. Most songwriters are intensely curious people. And so most of us that I'm aware of are pretty well read also. I was recently advised by the head of an MFA program that I was not suitable, mainly because I wasn't interested in the authors she liked, and I wanted to know, were they teaching Flannery O'Connor? And she leaned forward to me and said, "She's dead, you know." At which point, according to the people I was with, the top of my head exploded. And I mean, schools are just, in general, those things are not meant for people like me. We get them in other places. But I am obviously a huge supporter of standard education because I think that most people can benefit from it. Anybody else? Raise a hand. Here's Ginny running back to you, even as we speak, running back to you.
Hi.
Hi.
What books are on your nightstand? Talk about.
Right now I'm embarrassed to say it's my Kindle. I just read The Dutch Wife, and I just read Peter Nimble, which I enjoyed very much. I'm a huge young adult fan, probably because that's where my heart really lives. When I'm in doubt in music, I go back to Billie Holiday, and when I'm in doubt in writing, I go back to Madeleine L'Engle. But I read a lot. I'm pretty omnivorous about it, and those are the two most recent books. It's been a good year for young adults this year and last year. There's been a lot of good stuff out there. I usually post on my Facebook page, which is called the Janis page, in case you were wondering. I post a quote of the day that usually has a lot of people doing what people do on Facebook, which is argue. You can post the most innocuous thing, like I'm having a great day, and people will chime in and go, "I'm not!" And I always say, I hope you feel better after posting that, because I certainly don't. I do a Godzilla haiku every other day. We're up to, what number are we up to, Pat? 1470. Number 1470 of the Godzilla haiku. They haven't caught me yet. And I encourage people to submit haiku. If you go to janisian.com, there's an entire page of directions about haiku and information. Please, because I can't write them all. But I usually post on Facebook when I found an author that I have suddenly discovered and go, wow, I had no idea. I'm big on historical fiction also, so if anybody has suggestions, my website has a contact page. I'm stupidly easy to get hold of. I do see my own mail. And I'm always up for book suggestions. Anybody else? Mr. Vaught?
Yes, who do you admire the most musically?
Anybody who can survive. I'm serious. I mean, I have a lot of friends in this business. I have a lot of friends in the arts. I admire Lily Tomlin enormously, although you wouldn't call her a musician. I went to see her on Broadway do Signs of Intelligent Life 3 times because I was so stunned at her acting. I admire Bette Midler enormously. Bette Midler and Tina Turner. Bette made a very hefty contribution to our foundation last year, as did Lily and her partner Jane, her wife now. I admire Bette and Tina Turner because usually when I go to see another performer, I spend the show worrying about them and whether everything will be okay. But with Bette and Tina and Elton John and Billy Joel, I never worry. So I admire them enormously as performers because I will never be that good a performer. No, I am not saying that so people can contradict me. I will never be that good a performer because, quite frankly, performing comes last for me after writing, after recording, and after singing, and after playing. So I won't devote that kind of time to it. Whereas Tom Paxton, who has known me since I'm 13, is a student of performance. Livingston Taylor is a student of performance. My friends the Kennedys, who are playing in Sarasota in a couple of weeks, they're students of performing. I'm not. I'm a student of writing. And it's a very different thing. If I didn't write my own songs, I doubt that I would have the kind of success I've had. So, but there are a lot of people I admire. Celine Dion, I think, is amazing. And not just because she recorded one of my songs. I mean, I think she's an amazing performer and singer as well. There's so much good music out there. There's so much good music around here. I mean, never mind Sarasota, never mind Tampa. You know, there's music in Bradenton. There's music in Anna Maria, on Island, that just blows me away. There's people making things like ukuleles that blow me away. We forget that until very recently, music was something that was always homegrown. It was something you passed on, like the Carter family passed on. It was something that you did on a boring Friday or Saturday night. It was something you did in your church. It was something that communities gathered together to do. We forget that now, and we think, oh my God, I have to have the clothes. Oh my God, I have to have the training. Oh my God, I have to have this, that, and the other. You don't need any of that. All you need is a human being to make music. That's why it's so dangerous. That's why the first thing Plato bans is the musicians, the artists, because it's the artists who don't really need anybody's help to do what they're doing. All right, now I've lectured enough. Thank you very much. Anybody have a question like, how old are you, or why were you born, or what are you doing here, or you again with the pink shirt? What is it about women in pink? I don't know.
No, she wants to know.
You're not going to talk, so you're going to make her talk for you?
No, I'm not shy. But I wanted to know, like when you sing in the songs that you made are so beautiful, how does an artist not cry? Because we cry listening to your beautiful song. How does an artist keep singing and not have a broken heart or cry when they're singing? How did you get to that point?
I can tell you what my acting teacher, Stella Adler, told me. If I am crying, it's of no interest to you. My job is to make you feel. You don't care how I feel. You shouldn't. You're paying with your time, you're paying with money, you're paying with effort. You're paying. And as Livingston Taylor says, I should be down on my knees thanking you. It doesn't matter how I feel. What matters is how I make you feel. That's my job. It is a great answer, and I have Stella Adler to thank for it. I met her, oh my gosh. Anybody here study acting or know actors?
I know Stella.
Anybody? Oh, well, okay. Stella Adler, when I met her, I was 33, so she was 83. And she was the doyenne of the American theater. And she changed my life, as much as libraries did. She gave me words for being an artist. She would say things like, if you cannot speak from the truth, don't speak. Wait. Hardest thing on stage is silence. If you think about it, if you've ever been on stage or done any kind of public appearance, even if all you've done is go on a date or apply for a job, the most uncomfortable thing is silence. But if you can't speak truthfully as an artist, you have to wait. And sometimes that waiting makes you nervous, and sometimes it makes the audience uncomfortable, but you wait. I don't mean that you indulge yourself and you go, as I have known some artists to do, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling it, I'm not going on yet. That's my job. If it says an 8 o'clock show, I am in the wings at 10 to 8, and I've been there since 2 p.m., because that's my job. But when I'm on stage singing, I remember that I believe what I'm saying. I'm very lucky that the hit records that I've had on songs like Jessie or Stars or At 17 are all songs that I'm very proud of. Hope that answered it.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, we don't get to do that. And that's good, because if we did it, we would be really boring, even more boring than most of us really are. And trust me, most of us are boring. Anybody else?
That's a fact.
This is your last chance. Oh, see? Yes, she's coming. Here she comes. Those of you watching YouTube, we're really trying hard to keep this moving. But most people here have either read my autobiography and already know everything about me, or they're like the lady who told my wife earlier that I wasn't really here.
First of all, thank you for being here.
Oh, you're so welcome.
I often wonder about artists who write and who sing and even poetry. How does it come to you? I mean, do you see something? Do you hear something? Do you experience something?
Yes to all of those.
Oh.
And I say that not to say. I think one of the reasons every great artist I've met, and I'm talking about people I think are great artists like Ella or like Chick Corea, who I think is a great artist, Herbie Hancock. Every great actor I've met, every great painter I've met, no matter how arrogant we appear, and we are arrogant about our work, is humble in the face of their own talent. Because we know that that's something we were born with. It's the luck of the draw to be born with the talent, into the right culture, into the right country, into the right family, into the right times. If my grandparents had stayed in Russia, I don't know what I would be, but I would not be an artist because I don't fit the mold. And I think any real artist knows that. You're born with the talent to get the inspiration. Once in a while, like at 17, I was reading an article in the New York Times Magazine section about a girl who said, I learned the truth at 18. My debutante ball didn't solve anything. And the song came from that. Other songs like my autobiography came from somebody making a wisecrack. And other songs just, you're there one day and something pops into your head, and on a good day you grab it and you run with it. It's like being on a runaway horse a lot of the time. And it's more fun than I could ever explain. It's better than anything in the universe. It's the act of creation itself, whether it's creating a child and giving birth, or writing a song and finally finishing it and singing it and hearing it in your head. There's nothing better. There is nothing better. And on that happy note, I'm going to close this up and thank the Friends of the Island Library again, and thank the hotel and the guests.
Thank you very much for coming this afternoon. Everyone with a ticket is invited to the after party sponsored by the Islander right out by the pool.